You're listening to Conversations with Creative Entrepreneurs with Lisa Sonora Beam. Today I have the great pleasure of talking with Susannah Conway about her new book, This I Know, Notes on Unraveling the Heart. Susannah is a photographer, writer, and the creator of the wonderful, famous, awesome Unraveling e-courses. She's a Polaroid addict. Actually, she has a whole nother book about Polaroid photography that is also excellent. She's a very proud aunt and has spent many years in London working as a fashion editor and freelance journalist before she started her blogging and Unraveling e-courses. She shares her heart with people around the world via her blog at susannahconway.com. And This I Know is a book about unraveling the layers of our lives, delving beneath the surface in order to better understand ourselves, our relationships, and our path. Susannah uncovered this process following a tragedy, the sudden death of the man she loved. In sharing her journey of self-discovery, she reveals how grief reshaped her life and led her to reconnect with her creativity, make peace with her past, and learn to appreciate herself. Welcome, Susannah.
Oh, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, it's so wonderful to have the opportunity to talk with you about your book, which I could not put down, and I really mean that. I read it in one evening. I stayed up all night till I finished it.
I didn't know that, but thank you.
Yeah, as soon as I got it, I couldn't wait to get to it and just devoured it.
Thank you.
You write in the introduction, to be writing about grief so many years later is not painful, but it is hard. Could you say more about that? Because I found that really interesting.
I think because when I was writing the book, I was 6 years after 6 years since he died. So, you know, the grief isn't as raw, obviously, and I'd healed a lot and processed a lot and, you know, had moved forward. So I had moments when it was actually quite hard to look back over memories and look back over journals and you know, and dig into all of that. But it was an interesting journey, really, because sometimes it was emotional, and then sometimes I'd find that I really could feel the distance and could look at it more as an observer. And you know, I'd say 50% of the book is actually quite emotional. So it's, you know, it's a mixture of my journey through bereavement, but also through healing and the things that I did and things that I think about life. And there are lots of musings and reflections, and so it's sort of half memoir, half book about creativity, really. But yeah, the hardest parts were looking through journals to remember different times that I wanted to refer to, and the chapter on grief, which is the first chapter, just flowed out of me. It was actually quite easy to write because I knew that story so well, and I knew what I wanted to say about it. It's, you know, small parts I'd maybe mentioned on the blog before, or a lot of it was already journaled. So that was an easier chapter to write, but still, you know, it's still a tender place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that I know my listeners and readers and myself, we really want to know about the creative process that you went through in writing the book. Totally fascinated with that. I know we share a same fascination with how do authors write their books.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so you've done a ton of blogging, ton of writing in public, and I'm just curious, maybe we could start there. How was writing your book the same or different from blogging, and how did blogging help you, or how did that influence your writing, if at all?
Well, it's that they're two completely different beasts, really. I mean, the thing with writing the book is it had to be 50,000 words. So you obviously don't sit down and think, right, 50,000 words. that doesn't happen. So I started, but I had to break it down. I already had, of course, a proposal that I'd given to my editor, and I'd written a sample chapter. So I had somewhere to start. It wasn't just like a blank page. But I had to work through, I had to figure out what each chapter would be, like really nail it down, what's going to be in each chapter. I had to figure out how many words each chapter would be, because that just felt like the easiest way to break it down into chunks, so it didn't feel like this mammoth project. And so that's where I started. And it actually took me a couple of months to even really begin writing, longer passages, because I needed to know what the map was going to be into the book before I could start writing it. And I had a lot of stuff I'd already, like I said, journaled, had a lot of notes, and I had a pretty good idea of where I wanted it to go. But it still felt like such a daunting thing to do right at the beginning. And I think also because it was my first book, I didn't even believe that I could do it. And I had all these insecurities about, who am I to write a book? Because all my life, books have been, the most precious thing to me. I was an early reader and always had my nose in a book as a child. And books are our friends, and books are where we find knowledge, and, books keep us safe. That's how I've always felt. So for me to actually write one, apart from feeling like a privilege, it also just felt really intimidating. So I had to start breaking it down into more manageable chunks, so I knew that I could find a way into it and actually start getting some words on paper or on the screen, obviously, because I wrote on a laptop. But I had to really, break it down so I could find somewhere to begin. And I just started with the chapter that I thought would be easiest to write, and went from there. But there was a lot of sitting down on my backside for myself to get 1,000 words out every day.
Right.
And you always like to think that you're going to have acres of time, and you can just, wait until the muse arrives on your shoulder and, jot out some beautiful prose. And actually, it wasn't like that at all. It was much more of a job that I had to sit down, get some words out, so I then had something to edit. Because actually, when I broke down the chapters and thought, right, it's probably going to be more 10 chapters, maybe 5,000 words each. Right, that suddenly feels more doable. A 5,000 word, almost like an essay. So I would, and I think about how many months have I got left? How many days have I got left? Right, how many words do I need to write every day to hit my deadline? And it suddenly.
I remember doing that, finishing The Creative Entrepreneur, and realizing, like, with a month left, I still had pretty much half the book to write, and that meant 1,000 words a day of like good writing or something. And it freaked, it was just like, oh my God.
It was absolutely terrifying. I just thought, I'm not going to make this. I haven't got enough words. What am I trying to say? Because also I was trying not to edit as I went, but of course you end up doing that and sort of circling back into what you wrote and reading it through, and then cutting bits out and chopping around and playing. But I just had to get as many words down as I could, while still trying not to make them too much, too waffly. I didn't want too much hot air in there. I wanted them to be okay words. But it became like a race. Yeah. And there was no waiting for the muse. I had to just sit down and write and do it. And it's a job, and I'm getting paid to do this. Right, let's do it. And I had to there were some days I had to really force myself. And then other days where you write 3,000 words in an hour and you're like, wow, where did that come from? And you do find the inspiration. And so I think in the end, it all kind of ends up joining up. But of course, it's always so much nicer when you've got 5,000 words that you can then start playing with. But I think it's just getting that really shitty first draft, like Anne Lamott calls it. Get your shitty first draft down, and then you can play to your heart's content. So yeah, it felt like a job, an important, enjoyable, but still a job. And I looked at it that way to make sure I got the work done. Because I think, to answer what I think your question was, when I'm writing my blog, that's great. That's really fun, because I can write about anything I like, and no one's checking my grammar, and I can do it at my whim, and write about whatever comes to me. And it could be 500 words, it could be 1,000 words, it could be just 10 photographs. And so that always feels creative, but that's always much more in the moment and how I'm feeling on the day. I never stick to a blogging schedule. I always just blog when I've got something to say. But with the book, I had deadlines, I had a proposal that I had to flesh out, I had chapter titles, I had goals that I'd set for myself. So even though there's so much personal stuff in the book, it still needed structure to hang on. Whereas blogging my way doesn't have any structure. I just do it when I feel like it.
Mm-hmm.
So, and also, blogging, you get an immediate feedback, and you also know you can go back in and change and delete and do whatever you want with your blog posts. And I think all the time I was working on the book, especially when we were editing it, the second pass, I knew that, my God, what I'm writing can't be changed. And that's really scary, because the book's going to go out there and I can't change it. I can't go in and, can I just take out that paragraph? Oh my God, I can't believe I said that. I need to delete that sentence. I have no more control. So it's a finished thing, but there's always stuff I could improve in it. And I just have to let it go and think, this is the best that I could do right now, and let it set sail. But it's quite scary.
Right. Well, I'm so glad you let it go, because it's such a great read. I'm really curious, Susannah, how did you decide on the book's structure? Because I don't know what I was expecting. I mean, I knew you were writing this book. I'd been reading your blog years ago, and you'd always talk about writing. And I think maybe I expected more total memoir or something like that. And when I got it, I was just, I just love how it's put together. It's memoir, and you talk about grief as being, it's not a book about grief, but grief's what's informed you and taken you to where you're at in your work. How did you decide what to include in the book, and how did you build this structure? Because that's what you're saying. I think the word you used was map. You needed a map to find your way into the book.
Yeah.
And
sorry, carry on.
Yeah, so what to include, because it's a wonderful combination of storytelling, poetry, memoir, your photographs. So there's all this creative inspiration, and I would think of it as a book about creativity.
Yeah, that's how I see it as well, actually. Although I noticed on Amazon it's in the grief section, and I think in Barnes and Noble as well. So, which is a bit disappointing, because it's not just about grief. Grief was just the beginning.
Book marketing hasn't caught up with the rest of the world, because a lot of books end up miscategorized.
Yeah, it was weird. Okay, so I decided on the shape of the book, and this is what took me the couple of months to really figure out, and it felt really important. And I knew it needed this shape. So to begin with, it was loosely based on my Unraveling course, because that goes through lots of different layers, like looking at your face, looking at your tribe, looking at your memories. Each week is an 8-week course. There are lots of different layers that we go through. So I started off wondering if the book should be really quite based on that course. But then the more I sort of played with that idea, the less it felt right. So I had to go back to my notebook and think, right, well, what are the other layers that I'm dealing with here? And obviously I then started with, there's grief. So the grief story needs to be told. That makes sense to be the first chapter, because that's the beginning. And then, to be honest, I can't even remember how I figured it out. It just came to me through a process of writing things down. And then I wrote them out on Post-it notes and had them up on a pin board, and was shuffling those around and feeling like I was achieving something, but actually I was really just procrastinating. But I needed to have something physical that I could move around.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I knew there would be a chapter about your face and how we think of ourselves physically. I knew there would be a chapter about childhood, and that felt right to sort of come quite early on in the book. I knew the last chapter would probably be about finding work that we love, and what that's been, because that's also quite a key part of my little journey to healing, is not just going through bereavement, but also finding work that meant something to me and finding my purpose again. So I thought, that needs to be included as well. And that's actually one of the chapters I kind of had the most problem with, because I didn't feel like I was the right person to be telling people how to find work they loved, because that's not really what the book was about. So I just kind of recounted what I did, and then shared some thoughts on how it seemed to come about and how it seemed to work, just to give a bit of inspiration to the reader, because I obviously do not have the answers about anything. But the entire book is really about, this is the stuff that I think, this is what's worked for me, these are some of my musings on it, and maybe you see yourself in here too. So it wasn't going to ever be just a memoir, because in my case that just didn't feel very inspiring. I could have written it in that way, but I just thought, actually, I'm much more interested in inspiring other people, because that's what I've done in my courses, that's what I do on my blog. it's about, here's what I've done, here's my experiences, but here, maybe this will help you too. So it's always been kind of reporting back from the trenches, if you like. So that's how it came about, really.
When you say this is how it might help you too, who do you imagine is your ideal audience for the book? Or is there anyone in specific you had in mind when you were writing it?
Yeah, definitely. All the way through, I was thinking about my unravelers, which are what I call the people that do my unraveling class, or anyone really that's taken my classes, because I teach 3 classes now. And also unravelers that I've met in real life when I've taught on retreats and stuff. I know my audience really, really well because they write to me and I've met them and I've taught them, and they share stories with me. So they are women. The book is definitely for women. They are probably in their late 30s, mid 40s, but they can be any age. I've had 18-year-olds taking my class and women in their 70s. But they're just women who are searching and questioning. And they might have kids, they might have not, they could be married, they could be single, they could be employed or not. They, from all walks of life, but they're trying to figure out what life is all about, and find the meaning in it, and find the meaning and purpose in their lives, and just, trying to live more mindfully and appreciate what they have, and just find that something special that we all want to find, because otherwise life's just such a boring walk, and they want to make it more of a, well, this is going to sound really cheesy, but more of a, playful ride. So, yeah, I was very aware of my reader when I wrote the book. I mean, she was just really clearly in my mind. And I know from all the feedback that I've had from students and people I've met, I know what they're searching for. And it's what I'm searching for too. So I wanted to report back my discoveries and theories because I thought it would be helpful. I mean, it was really lucky that I could know them so well, because I thought about them every day. I mean, I really did. And and while writing, I was still running my classes, so I was in contact with the people I was writing for. So it was a really quite a beautiful process.
You're calling your readers and your participants unravelers, and
Yes.
that's the subtitle of your book.
Yeah.
How does the subtitle go? I don't have it right in front of me. Notes on Unraveling the Heart?
Yes.
And I love your definition of unraveling. I'm just going to read it for people, and it's in this beautiful pull quote. By the way, the design of the book is totally gorgeous.
Oh,
Yeah, I actually have a PDF that was sent to me to Mexico for my review, but I can't wait to get my hands on the physical copy.
oh, I really, really want to get the book to you, because you'll love it. I know you will. The paper's beautiful. The size of it's great. It was so important to me that the physical attributes of the book were right.
It is gorgeous. Yeah.
It's got to fit in your bag. It's got to feel good in your hand. The paper's really matte and lovely, and the Polaroids, the colours are still really, true to how they are in real life. And yeah, that stuff was really important.
Well, it even looks good on my iPad as a PDF right now, the review copy I have. And I love the typography. Everything is so beautiful. And I'll read this definition that you have on unraveling. Unraveling is not a bad thing. It's not coming undone or losing control. It's letting go in the best possible way, untangling the knots that hold you back, unwrapping the gifts you've hidden for too long, unearthing the potential that's always been there, finally ditching the labels and should-haves, and letting yourself be what you were always meant to be.
Amen. Yes. I think that's the first time I've heard someone read a bit of my book back to me. It's actually, you should do the audio book for me, because that's lovely.
Oh, I love reading poetry aloud.
Yeah.
I always do that at my workshops. I know I will be including this in my workshops, this snippet of unraveling.
Yeah, no, you read beautifully. That was perfect.
It's what my challenge is. It's hard for me to read things like that without crying or tearing up, and I always do in person. I'm always crying in front of people at my workshops. So yeah, I would love to read your book out loud. So any final thoughts? Let me see if I have any notes here about. Oh, I want to go back to that pin board for a second because I did see a picture on your blog, and if it's okay, I'll include that in the article that goes along with this podcast.
Sure.
Because I laid out my book the same way. I think very visually, and I have Post-it notes. And what I love about Post-it notes and pin boards is you can just move things around.
Yeah.
And it's very tactile.
Yeah.
In fact, I think I took a picture of my writing desk when I was doing Creative Entrepreneur, and it had just this crazy array of Post-its that meant something to me, that were really scribbled. And if people looked over my shoulder, they wouldn't know what the hell. It was like the mad scientist laboratory. But so say a little bit more about your physical organization and your pin board, and so you do a lot of writing on the computer, but you also keep journals, you also blog. How do you organize it and have everything accessible?
Quite messily is the honest answer. Well, the Post-it notes were at the beginning when I was working out the structure. They kind of disappeared as I was doing the main bulk of the writing. I don't work at a desk. I actually sit on my sofa, cross-legged, with a tray on my lap that holds my laptop because it's just more comfortable. Probably not so great for my RSI, but that's what works for me, and that's what how I wrote for 6 months. But I used the Post-it notes so I could move around the ordering of the chapters, and also to have the chapter names in front of me so I could figure out, if it worked and how it would go. But that actually happened just for maybe a month or so. I was playing with that and making notes. But when I was writing, I used a program called Scrivener, which you can buy online, which is so much easier to use than Word, because you have it's like opening a folder and you have all your documents all inside, but you can click on them and see them, at the same time. It's really fantastic.
I use Scrivener too, and I will put a link in there too. It's fantastic.
It's brilliant. So I could reorder my chapters within Scrivener, within the one project, and that was really helpful. I could keep all my cuts in there. Everything I cut out, I kept. I didn't delete, and just kept everything in that document, so it was all in there. And it was, a fantastic way to write. And as soon as, of course, I had to send it to my editor, I had to send it in a Word document. And then you get it back to make the edits. And then I was having to use Word, and that was just a nightmare because it's just one long document.
Right.
Whereas when I was using Scrivener, it was all broken down into chapters. So that was easier. I had one Moleskine journal that I used as my book journal. And so I would, some passages started in there. Sometimes to sort of loosen up what I was trying to say, I'd just write it by hand, or make notes. I just put everything in there. It's full up with notes from the book, so that's really nice to keep. And I always use Moleskines for my journaling anyway, because that's just what I've always done. And that's it really. That was my system. Was like Moleskine, Scrivener, pinboard, laptop, sitting down with lots of coffee.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Absolutely. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay, and to conclude, I know there's a lot of writers who'll be listening to this, or would-be writers, could-be writers, want to be published writers listening to this. And I know another thing that we share is introversion. Even though it might not look like that, sometimes sometimes people get the idea of, if you're publishing a blog, you're extroverted. But so many introverts are publishing, and I'm just wondering, what advice could you offer to other introverted creatives who want so much to share their voice and gifts with the world, but feel afraid or lack confidence?
Well, definitely start writing a blog, because you blog from behind the safety of your monitor. So, I mean, I'm quite extroverted online, but offline, I'm quite introverted. I mean, I've been blogging for 6 years, so I've obviously found the comfortable space of knowing how to share what I share online. But it's been a process. I mean, I didn't immediately start spilling my guts, although actually that's rubbish. I kind of did. Because I started writing about my bereavement. But then, okay, in my defense, I didn't have many readers. So, I was sharing my grief journey, but, with a handful of people. So that felt safer. I think you don't immediately start writing and then have thousands of readers. So actually, by the time you get to that point, if that's what you're aiming for, you'll have, you do it gradually. So you find your comfort zone and you find your way of sharing what you want to share. But I think there's so much to be gained from letting yourself be seen. I mean, the only reason I have a book coming out is because someone from a publishing house read a blog post I wrote saying I wanted to write a book and emailed me saying I'd love to see a proposal. So if I hadn't been a blogger, I wouldn't be an author now. So so much has come into my life from just sharing online, and on the online space is incredibly magical these days. There's so many connections and so many opportunities, and all the good has always outweighed the bad. And I've had a handful of negative comments on my blog, but in 6 years, that's pretty good going.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, in my experience, being brave enough to share my stuff online has helped other people. And that's really rewarding as well, because, when I was writing about grief, that was mainly for me because I needed to get it out and I needed to be seen in some way, even if it was just by my own eyes looking back at my words. But as time went on and people got in touch with me, and then obviously I started teaching, the feedback's just been so incredible that I know that I'm doing something useful. And that's, to be honest, all I ever really wanted to do. For all the journalism I did and all my different past lives of living in London, I just always wanted to do something worthwhile. And that's what I found by being online. So you just never know what's going to happen. And even if you just use blogging as a vehicle for self-discovery, it's like an alchemical process where you put something online, and by publishing it, you seem to give it more power, and it becomes something. You have this creative space that you can stake your claim and, stick your flag and have a place to say what you need to say, whatever it is. You might want to write a knitting blog. It doesn't always have to be about the blood and guts of living. But it's just, there's something about having a bit of real estate online that's your space, that's just for you. And who knows who's going to find it and what connections you can make and the community you can be part of. And yeah, if you're a writer, you've got somewhere to put your words, and that's really powerful. So yeah, I'd say blog. Get a blog. Start writing a blog.
Yay! Well, and you're saying it's an alchemical process and you never know what's going to happen. But what's happening right here, like this interview, is because we're both bloggers. We're both bloggers before we were authors. Same thing too. A publisher's contacted me to write a book. I didn't even try. They just said, "Oh, we like what you're saying. Have you thought about writing a book about this?" It's like, well, yes, I have, but there's nothing like a book contract to make sure you actually do it. I could still be thinking about it.
But that's the thing, though. Actually, if you're a writer and you are seeking publication at some point, publishers want to know if you have a blog. They want to know what kind of social media audience you have. So it is essential to be blogging then. Mm-hmm. So not only will it build your confidence in what you're doing and bring an audience, but it will also seduce a publisher. So it's without question essential to have a blog if you're seeking publication. Definitely.
I like that. That could be a title: How to Seduce a Publisher.
Well, that's what you do these days. And also, I mean, publishers are really canny. They are looking for bloggers because they are looking for new books to publish.
Yeah.
I mean, so it makes sense if you want to be found. Or try and catch their interest, then you need something you can share. You need to say, hey, check out my blog, check out my website.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Your blog, your website should be the same thing. Don't have them separate. Keep it all together. Have your one online space where you are chronicled and profiled, and you share your best self or your worst self if that's what you want to talk about. I mean, God, I've talked about all sorts of terrible things, but that's just part of being honest.
Well, that's great reading too, by the way.
I know. I always get those comments when I really spill my guts.
I know. It's like the most vulnerable things get the most. Yeah. Well, and that's the alchemical thing about blogging too, is this beautiful connection. When you said you write, publish online, blog, you don't know who's going to find you. What I've found very interesting is it's almost like sometimes I feel like I'm emitting some kind of signal, maybe like a smoke signal, if you will, and my tribe can find me. They can't
Yeah.
find you if you're only writing at home in your journal, which I did for so many years. I was terrified to ever put anything out in public.
Yeah.
I struggled with that for a long time. And then when I did, it's amazing that the people who I've connected with online and then through my classes are the kind of people I want to be friends with.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, 100%. I mean, my circle of friends here in England, a lot of them I met through blogging, but it goes further than that. I've got friends all over the States, in Australia, in Europe, you know, quite a few of whom I've actually met and spent time with and stayed with, and, you know, I've known for years. So yeah, I definitely drew my tribe to me through being online. And you're basically just standing with a cigarette lighter in your hand, holding up a little light. Well, a candle. That's maybe a little bit more of a romantic visual.
Oh, let's be honest.
See, I'm at a festival, holding a lighter. You're holding a candle in the air, and you're lighting the way so people can find you. But then also you can find like-minded people as well. And I think, especially for introverts, blogging is a magical way to get to know someone, because it speeds up the process, so that when you finally get to speak in an email or on the phone or whatever, or even in person, you already know each other. You kind of fast forward through the crap, and you just talk about what really matters. I mean, that's always been my experience. And I can only think of maybe one time I met a blogger and we didn't instantly hit it off. Just one time out of hundreds. So it's brilliant. It's like a really fantastic online dating site for friends. Not so great for meeting men, but it's fantastic for meeting, kindreds. It's lovely.
Just to close, kind of winding down, but I wanted to read another short passage and to let people know that the book is filled, every chapter has a way to interact and do a creative process with yourself. And I think I read one of the other reviewers of your book said, I kept putting the book down to go get my camera or write. And I found myself mentally doing the same thing. I mean, I would put the iPad down to take notes in my notebook, and if it hadn't been the middle of the night of writing, I would have had to run out the door with my camera.
Yeah.
And in one of the chapters, and I think this is a nice way to kind of pull together what we were just talking about for writing and introverts and publishing, you have this beautiful section about writing, and it's a prompt basically that you're giving people. And it says, we don't write to be published, though publication may come. We write to make sense of the noise in our heads. We write to record memories and share what we know. We write to feel less alone, to confide our fears to the page. Imagine a world without love letters, without birthday cards and dedications. Our truthfulness can change a life, if not someone else's, then our own. In a world swirling with thousands of languages, there is space for everybody to tell their story. Photographs, paintings, and music carry the essence of our hearts, but it's the words that tell the secrets. And then here's your invitation. Pick up a pen and claim your words. Leave messages to yourself in the sand and carve your initials on a tree. Write on the walls or on the back of a receipt. Just get it down. Your words are powerful. Use them.
Yeah, good advice. Yeah, I really believe that. It's really funny hearing someone read it. But yes,
I'm sure, yeah.
I've been writing a diary or a journal since I was 11. And actually it coincides with the time when my father left us. So I started writing, and I didn't ever write about it. I was too little, but I always had a notebook. I was always just so intensively writing stuff down and recording my days, and I've just done it ever since. So it's just so normal to write stuff down. It's how I make sense of the world. It's how I know what I'm feeling. And oftentimes I feel like my journal is my best friend, because it's the one and only place I can truly be honest.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, and I've written lots of honest things in this book, but you know, it's my journal where I can be as awful or as brilliant or as heartbroken or you know whatever it is as I need to be. So, and not everyone wants to write, and I get that. You know, my mum's not a big writer, and I understand, but for me, somehow, it's always been the thing I did, and it's incredibly comforting and often incredibly wise, and sometimes just really laugh out loud ridiculous. But it's brilliant. I love it. It's really important, I think.
Me too, absolutely. Thank you so much for this conversation. I really appreciate your generosity and being willing to share so much of yourself here in our talk, but also in your wonderful book.
Well, thank you for having me, and thank you for reading my words so beautifully. That's really made my day. Thank you, honey.
Your whole book reads like that. It is, you can really tell that you're a reader and that you love language and you love poetry, because there's so many times I couldn't do any highlighting or note taking on the PDF like you can do in a Kindle or something. But and I wouldn't want to do it on the physical book because it's like an art book. It looks too pretty to write on.
No, you've got to write on it. You've got to scribble on it. It's a book to scribble on.
Oh, but there's so much you just want to do that, and I kept rereading things over and over again because it's very, very poetically stated what you're sharing, and the photographs again. You can't. I'll try to get some pictures to put on the blog post, but everyone just needs to get their own copy. That's all.
Well, the photographs are actually quite a key part of it. I knew I wanted the book to have photos. And actually, when I was planning, see, that's another thing we didn't talk about.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
When I was planning the structure, I had a really good idea of what the photographs were going to be. And they are definitely the part of the book that I feel most confident in, because I feel confident about my photography. I mean, obviously so much more nervous about the words, but I knew the photos I'd use, and half of them have been, you know, out in the world before. I might have blogged them or shared them, but half of them haven't been. So I took special photos just to illustrate the chapters. But they're a crucial part of it as well. I wanted them to be like places to breathe within the text, and also illustrate or allude to the things that I was talking about. So you can't have one without the other. You know, there has to be the Polaroids with the words. I couldn't have just had words. No way.
It works so beautifully together. And the chapter that I have most bookmarked, probably every page has a little bookmark on it, is the chapter where you're talking about photography and writing and how you do both, and they do two different things for you. That you used photography to take you out into the world and be in the world, and that writing was more the way you went inward.
Yeah.
And the exercises and suggestions you're giving for people, they don't need to be writers or photographers or artists to be able to do them. It's about creative process.
Yeah, it's just about expressing yourself in some way. Mm-hmm. I mean, I can't paint to save my life, but I'll still give it a go once in a while. But it's in more of a childlike way, because it's just fun and it's free, and it's, you know, I try not to be too precious about it, even though I'm really not very good at it. But the photography is just what I do every day. I mean, that is like breathing. It's just so normal to take photographs and record. I can't, it's a compulsion almost, which is why I love Instagram, because, you know, I love just taking a snap of my lunch. Fantastic. It's just, oh, okay. Another thing we should have talked about. As I wrote the book, part of my process was taking photographs. And I used it, not necessarily even photographs to share, but I would do my 1,000 words, or attempt to do my 1,000 words. And then I would need to get up, and I'd pick up my iPhone, or I'd pick up my Polaroid, or whatever camera I had to hand, and I'd have to go out and take photographs, or I'd take photographs in the flat, or, you know, however I felt, whatever I needed, whatever the weather was doing. But that was my way of punctuating my writing time, because if I had to sit down all day, I was going to go insane. So I needed to sort of shake off the weight of trying to find the words and, you know, mopping my brow with all the stress of it, and just do something light. And for that, for me, that was taking photos. So it was a really, really fantastic way to do it. Now I look back, and it's exactly how I would write my next book. Is, have the two creative processes fed each other. So I wasn't even taking photographs for the book. I just needed to do something that was completely different to writing. And the photography was it. And that you brought the memory back. That really helped.
Oh, good. Well, and this is what I'm fascinated with practically more than anything in life is how do people make their beautiful things? How does their creative process support them, help them, inform them? How do we make what we make? Because I too share the same lifelong love of books, started journaling very young, also due to a traumatic event in childhood that I sought refuge in libraries. It was my safe space, and my notebook was my safe space. I didn't know it then, but it just turned out in retrospect, well, that's what I was doing. How smart was that,
Yeah.
And then I found my family and friends in books and authors and also librarians. It was just, the library overall is just like the best invention ever. It's a refuge and it's a sanctuary. And
Yes.
then all the books. I still feel a sense of the magical whenever I go into a library, and I'm amazed that so many people sat down and did the difficult work of bringing a book to life. I just have tremendous respect for that.
How lucky are we that people actually sit down and write novels? I mean, that's one thing I can't imagine writing, actually.
Exactly.
I've always written non-fiction, but just how amazing to just get lost in a world and create it. And wow, it's amazing. Amazing.
It's pure magic.
Yeah, it is. It really is. Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing again so much of yourself and your creative process. And I have a feeling we'll end up talking again about more stuff.
I could talk about this all day, actually.
Yeah, same here.
Just send me an email and I'm there.
Okay, sounds great, Susannah. Best wishes with your possible book tour. I will update my blog too about this if you end up getting to come
to the States,
and travel around. And people can always find out the latest of what's happening with you at SusannahConway.com, and I'll have that spelled out on the webpage as well.
Brilliant. Thank you, honey. It's been a pleasure.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much.